We are live here with none other than former AWA, WWE, been to Japan, been all over the world. He was known as the Viking, the Berzerker, John Nord the Barbarian. Here he is. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me, Hannibal. I'm not much on us old farts aren't much up on computers and all that, but God, I can't help but see you're all over that thing. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me, man.
We've had a lot of your friends on, so it's nice to finally have you on.
Thanks.
Now, you grew up with the whole Minnesota crew there. You went to high school with, I think, Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude and maybe the Road Warriors. I'm not sure if they were there the same time frame as you, but could you tell us a little bit about growing up with those guys?
Well, I won't try to make it too long, but growing up with guys like Kurt Hennig, and then going to high school with them, and Kurt Hennig, Barry Darsow. You guys know what guys when I say Dean Peters or Brady Boone, and Mike Higstrand went to the high school next to us, but kind of in the same neighborhood as far as geographically. So Mike was like right in the middle of the group, and Joe Laurinaitis actually was on the other side of town, kind of in a ritzy type neighborhood. So, but growing up with them guys, and you couldn't absolutely grow up with any better guys anywhere in the world. And I know that we all kind of think that about our high school buddies and all that. But that's just what I think, and that's the first thing that comes to mind when people ask me that. But yeah, and then we all just put in a word to get each other in. But I don't know. I guess and Mike, went to Eddie Sharkey's camp. I went to Brad Rangan's camp. Barry Darsow went to, I don't know, Barry, I think he went to Eddie's camp, but we still all come from the same, area and all that. So I don't know. We just, one thing we always just kind of got together growing up. We kind of just told each other there's nothing better than being dead loyal to the bitter end. And I think that's what we always had in our head. And all the guys that have passed, Rick and Kurt and Mike Hagstrand and whoever I'm missing, man, they just died so young. It was, it still hurts, man. It really does. It hurts. So.
Who would have been the toughest of that crew? All of them were known to have pretty tough guy reputations.
Yeah, you know what? I had kind of had a feeling you were going to ask me that. Put it this way. If you get a guy that has got a few amateur wrestling skills, he's going to beat the other guys because everything's pretty close. Mike Hagstrand, Rick Rude, they could hit like mules, with their upper body. But and I'm just kind of explaining the way it was but you got to one leg or something could take them down. You could probably beat them in a fight. Barry Darsow was like the most underrated athlete because he's such a nice guy, but he was like an athlete. He could run like the wind, played football at Northern Iowa, and he just never kept going. And he's a nice guy in pro wrestling on everything he did. So he was just so underrated. But he wasn't, Barry, you're going to have your hands full. Hell yes. And then I don't know, I guess me and the couple guys, whoever I'm missing, that's such a damn hard question. That's a court, but
Yeah, I bet no one really messed with you guys in high school.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the back there says, I know I could beat all them guys he just talked about. That's what I'm thinking, But if Mike was sitting here next to me, he'd be saying the same thing. It just never happened.
Yeah, there was Scott Norton and Nikita Koloff too, I think.
Yeah, and Nikita Scott, he was more of the athlete than the fighter, and so I don't know if Scott would have fared well because he had his mind more on fighting, or I mean not fighting, but athletics. And Scott Norton, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing, Hannibal, that happened was I was in 11th grade, I think, and we had gotten in this fight at the local McDonald's a little bit. Kurt Hennig had went up and punched Higstrand in the face through a car window that was rolled down, and just gave him a little, pop. And Mike got out and looked for him, and Kurt, Kurt was kind of gone, and crazy stuff happens. It's a, Friday night in high school, and all kinds of crazy shit can happen. But they came to the high school thinking that I was the one who did it. And so the principal had to step in, and, I'm yelling, F you, Scott, and they were from the school next to us. So if you know how it is in high school, if you're from anywhere but your high school, you're like F off, so I don't know what that really, how exciting that story that was, but that's what happened. And I don't know. There was kind of like nobody was scared of anybody, but there was definitely guys who were top 3, 4 guys that would absolutely beat the shit out of everybody else. And I don't think Norton or Higstrand were either of them. I really don't. And I don't mean that bad. But, and, like Scotty, I heard something. He told something on a book that how did the gym start? And then he wrote, did he write a book? Norton?
I believe so.
Yeah. Did he? Yeah, that's what I heard. And I just heard that. So, anyways, he wrote that the gym started in this guy Jim Younger's basement that we went to high school with, and it didn't start in his basement. It started in another guy's basement. So there's a lot of this stuff, and I think that's what I like about you. You ask these dead blunt questions only to get the truth, but the point is you got to check these facts on some of these guys. Not you, but I'm just saying in general, guys will fill in the gaps just to keep rolling. But I'm kind of a particular fact guy. Like, no, he wasn't the toughest. Mike Higstrand was one of the greatest guys in the world. So was Rick Rude. But neither of them were the toughest. No way. And neither was Scott Norton. Never in a million years, you can trust me. There was tougher guys back then.
As far as your lifts back then, what kind of powerlifting lifts were you doing for bench press, squat, and deadlift?
What was I doing?
Yeah, like as far as your power lift, you talk about the gym where you guys all trained and you were all extremely strong.
Well, I'll tell you, that guy that started the gym, we went down to Tijuana, Mexico, and when I was 17 years old, right out of high school, and bought these little 5 milligram Diana balls. And so I got to say, I started taking Diana ball when I was 17, but I didn't even realize, I thought they were like, this stuff is like a vitamin or something, I didn't quite understand how. And so I ended up going to college and playing a few years in the USFL. And believe me, I was second string guard, but I think the best I ever did was before I started basically getting nerve damage. I hit pretty close to the 5 on a bench, and deadlift probably 680, 690, and squats. I think the most I ever got up to was about 550, 600 for 4 or 5 reps, that type of thing. But back then it was so rare to be doing them kind of numbers. When you showed up for football camp, it was great because you can move people, as an O lineman, you could move people other guys weren't moving.
How did you end up getting into professional wrestling?
Well, I grew up in Robbinsdale, and Kurt Hennig basically got me in with Brad Rangens. But when I was in camp, my father-in-law, I was married 25 years. My father-in-law was Vern Gagne's best friend in high school at Robbinsdale in 1943. Yeah, 1943. So, and that helped a lot. Vern could never fire me because I no-showed a few shows and stuff like that. Other guys would have been fired right away. And back then, the AWA had came down so much that you almost had to treat it like a part-time job. Even if you did it 3, 4 hard nights a week, it still wasn't enough money that you really wanted.
I see. How tall are you legitimately? Because you're always billed around 6'7", 6'8". Sometimes wrestlers are exaggerated, but I remember seeing you against Goldberg, and you were quite a bit taller than Goldberg.
Yeah, but if you look, Hannibal, I had some heels on the back of my boots. I had a couple inches there, but I was 6'5", and I'm I was probably 6'5.5", but I'm about 6'4.5" now as I'm getting older. But 6'5", yeah. But with the boots, I probably was 6'8". I don't know. But it was hard to run in them damn things. You having 3 inches on your heel and all that. It made it really kind of awkward, and I wish I wouldn't have, because I think I could have moved better.
At what point did you come up with the Nord the Barbarian character?
Well, Vern Gagne had me working for a while, and he sent me down to Mid-South to learn. And I go down to Mid-South. The first day I'm there, and obviously Vern had called Bill Watts and said, take care of him. He's my years ago, my best friend's son-in-law. So, which I didn't even pick up, though. I didn't even think that could ever happen. So all I know is I was supposed to go down to Mid-South. So I drove down there with Jimmy Garvin's boots and put them on. And I think they were size 11. My toes were like right up to the edge of the boots. And I show up at the interview place in Shreveport I think it was on Kings Highway, and Bill Watts told Jake to just do whatever you want. And Bill Watts was the guy who gave me the Barbarian. And then Jake took me to a barber and shaved my head, kind of like a Hawk had already had, And back then the Road Warriors were over so strong. Everybody was saying, well, let's try to be a little bit like the Road Warriors or something, you know? So I kind of was told to do an off thing off them. But me and Jake were pretty much partners for about 9-10 months in 1985. And Jake was a lot of fun. He really was. And everybody, has stories about Jake. But when I met him, we were both so young that, he was just a little boy inside. He's no different than the rest of us. But yeah, and Jake really took care of me. Jake really is a wrestling genius,
Yeah, and he just re-signed, I guess, with AEW for another 2 years. So he's lucky to be
Yeah,
getting those big paydays again.
I just heard that. I just heard that too today, and I'm like, God, only Jake can have this body. It's like he don't work out. He's like half, you know. And if you think Jake is sober, you're freaking nuts, Jake. I hope you heard that because I know him so well. He could be sober, maybe. He's probably a lot like me. I can be sober for a month, but not much past that. I just don't got it in me. I just don't care to be. But I had Jake up for a show in 1999 at a real hoity-toity high school in Minneapolis, a real rich high school. My nephew was going there, and they were trying to raise money. And I called Jake. I said, will you come in for $1,000? And he said, yeah. So he did come in, but he comes up and he said, brother, I want the $1,000 first. And I said, really? Come on. Like, I'm going to pay you, dude. Come on, get over that. And he goes, no, man. And I think he was stoned or something. So I put the $1,000 in his hand. He disappears. God, guess what happens? Jake goes to the hood, the same place I've been. It ain't nothing I haven't done myself, and gets high as hell, shows up at the high school higher than hell. And Lynn Denton, who I had brought in too to go main event at this high school, and Jake's throwing up over the top rope, and one of his boots gets pulled off in the match, and he's throwing up in that. And there's people in Minnesota that will never let me forget about that match. But if Jake or Lynn Denton lived there, they would know what I mean. It's just, yeah, you had to be there.
Yeah, Jake did that to a lot of promoters actually before he supposedly went sober. Len Denton, you bring him up. I know you were talking about him earlier. I've interviewed him. Apparently, he's not the biggest guy downstairs in the world.
What about Lynn Denton? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to go with on that, but earlier I think
you got to run in.
We got to run in. Oh,
Behind.
Bobby Fulton. Bobby Fulton. Yeah, 1985 Mid-South. Bobby Fulton's coming up and going, Murdoch says he's going to beat the shit out of me. Why is he like that? And I'm like going, well, Bobby, he is an asshole. Just take it, Just take it. Well, he says I went over by the heels, and I didn't. Right? And then Bobby was such an error. And he would switch subjects right away, going, I got the best car ever made. It's called a Mazda 626. Yeah. I'm like going, Bobby, I really don't care about this. But I remember this 6 years later. He was one of the most awesome guys alive.
Thanks. Here, let me give you my wallet right now. Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to bust in here.
It's okay. I hope you're doing well, Bobby.
Better, Hannibal. Thank you, buddy. We've been down here in North Carolina.
I have not been there yet. No.
Oh, you got to be there. But we're here for the gathering. It's been a great time. Now, Hannibal, I talk a little funny, but when I sing, I sound just like Elvis Presley.
Right.
Well,
but it'll bring tears to your ears. Hey, I love you guys. I just wanted to come on here and say hello. John Nord, I hadn't seen him in so many years.
All right.
And I want to say hello to everybody out there.
Thanks, Bob. Great to see you. Hope to run into you again someday.
Thank you.
John, there's some people watching live, and they all want to know, because you may have seen it, where Butch Reed told me his version of your fight.
Okay.
Could we get your version? We also have Hacksaw gave a version of it too.
Yeah, I seen that, and that's pretty close, Jim. And I don't know if this is the version, but I can tell you this. This is how it happened. It was Sunday. It was a Sunday, and we were going, I think, to Oak City in Mid-South. And I'm with Steve Williams, and he pulls out the pot pipe. And I am not a pot guy. I just was never my deal. I'm like alcohol, pills, or crack, But anyways, Doc pulls out. He has me smoking it, and next thing I know, I'm just kind of out of it. But in the ring, we had started pulling back, and I pushed him in the corner of the ring, and I said, "You fucking just." I don't know what it was. Some kind of tugging match got going, and we made the match, but he came back in, and I mean, this is my first year of being in the business, and he came in screaming at me, this, that, and the other, and I just hit him with a right punch, and Butch's face just like puffed up right away, and he tried to put his finger in my eye, and I had like a scratch here. And you know what? To this day, I'm going to tell you right now, that deal was my fault. It really was. Butch didn't try to instigate that. Butch ain't a fighter, but he just couldn't believe this young guy would like shove him in the corner and say, I ain't doing shit. Just get, and I don't know how, you can pretty much guess it. And Butch has passed, and I don't want to sit here and talk down about him. That's really hard. He was a great guy. We rode together later that.
You wrestled that night, didn't you? You had to wrestle again later that day.
Right. We had to wrestle again. And Bill Watts is like going, well, let him work it out in the ring. And Butch took me aside and said, listen, I just want this thing to go away. Because Butch wasn't going to beat me up. Butch is not a fighter. He just ain't. He just ain't a guy that was going to, like have, just, super hard punches and on and on, most guys know the guys who they wouldn't want to fight. And I don't know the list. I don't know who's on top. I don't know who's 10th, but Butch didn't want to fight no more. I just always felt bad because I got effed up on pot, and I started this, and it ended up being my fault. It started and everything, but all Bill Watts wanted to see was a fight, you know, more again, the second round in the nighttime in Tulsa or wherever we were that night. But it was just like, believe me. And then I shook off the pot out of my brain, and I'm like, God, I just, you know, first of all, if I'm going to be in this, I just don't want to go up and just start punching them in the face or anything like that. And that's how it happened. And really, I didn't get punched. I didn't get anything. I got a scratch by my eye, and
didn't he try to pick up a pole at some point?
yeah, he had a white, that plastic tubing in plumbing. There was a big white pole in that, and he picked it up, but that wasn't going to hurt me. So I can't really remember that clearly how that pole would ever hurt me, because it was plastic tubing, and I'm like, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be funny, but yeah, I mean, and I think I seen Jim Duggan's deal that, he had, that his son, and I thought he was pretty close. So whatever Jim said, it sounded kind of pretty close to what I think happened too.
What do you think about the people that say Haku would have been the toughest? Because you always hear the stories about him.
No effing way. No way. I love Haku, but I would get into it with him in Japan on some stuff in being stuck over. I'm like, why is everybody on this Haku deal? This guy is not that tough. And that's what I just like, no effing way. He was not. And I talk about that to other people, and I'm like, I don't get it. I do not get the Haku deal. I don't get it. He looks really, he's a Samoan, man. He's a Tongan, they look super intimidating, but, you gotta, there was nothing proved on that. And I still, if I seen him today, I would say, you weren't the toughest. No way, dude. He knows I would tell him that to his face.
How was your experience working with the Von Erichs in Dallas?
Really quite crazy, because we were just talking about that. I worked with Kevin in Texas Stadium, and Brody had the book, and I worked main event Texas Stadium in, I think it was 1987, May 87, I think. And Fritz comes up to me after the match and says, I want you to know that was one of the most finest matches I've ever seen. I says, God, thanks, Fritz. And I'm with Lynn Dent, and we're just squirrely as hell now. I'm happy. I had a good match, this, that, and the other. And it was really quick. Like 2 days later, we got paid. But I went home and I got a $600 check. A $600 check for Texas Stadium. Now, it might only been 10,000 people. It probably wasn't 20,000, but it was for sure 10, and it wasn't 60 or 80,000 people, but a $600 check. Are you freaking kidding me? So I quit. And I know Frank quit because I'm sure he got a really terrible payoff. Otherwise, he went to quit. And that's why that book didn't last any longer.
Kevin impression.
Huh?
Kevin impression.
What's that?
Kevin impression.
Yeah, Kevin. Oh, John, I just want to tell you that I really appreciate that match, and on and on. And I'm like, well, yeah, thanks. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a $3,500 paycheck, you know? I'm all fired up, and $600. Oh my God, you got to be freaking kidding me. And thank God I had, you know, a wife that was like had a job, and I was able to quit. Because the problem in this business that you don't want to knock out half the guys in the locker room is that if you do, you're going to lose your job. Thus, your kids will be disappointed in your wife and on down the chain. And that's kind of what sucked really Hannibal over the years is, man, everything happens for a reason. But, you know, even WCW, you know, if you wouldn't had to just walk up to Kevin Nash or Scott Hall, these frickin' Division III basketball players that are now pro wrestlers, and just not, you know, if their arrogance and everything went away, they would have got the shit beat out of them. If not by some people, by me. I'll tell you that. I would have beat the fuck out of both of them. But here's my point is if you do, you're going to lose your job. You're on a $150,000 guarantee. It's free money. You're working 1 day a month. And it's just too good to be true. So you can't do it. And that's what kind of sucked is you had to put up with the gaga a little bit. Not that they ever called you out or anything. It was just the arrogance and the drama. Some of the drama that never even got brought up, you know, over the years. There's stories that never got brought up over the years. But
what's an example of that we haven't heard other than we all heard the locker room drama was crazy?
I don't know. I think. Oh, well, I don't know. WCW or WWF or what?
Y'all, WCW.
WCW?
Yeah.
God, you are perceptive. You're going to drag one out of me over there, son of a bitch. Well, I will tell you what happened once between me and Scott Hall. Because I know you like hearing the fight stories. You're like me. And I was like, you know, we were just all being kind of silly. And I think I walked by Scott and I said something like, your wife's still hanging around these locker rooms? Or I said something kind of, I was just being silly. And Scott's like, hey, well, so what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, man? I'm like, well, nothing. I was just being kind of silly, I said. And here I am now in the spot again. Again. Do I get fired by beating this guy to fucking death? Or because he ain't going to beat me to death? And I know this sounds arrogant, but I'm just saying the way it really is. I swear to God, I'm telling you the way it really was. And there was a lot more of that than what, you know, that's an example that I know in my head. And I don't know, me and, you know, for some reason, Scott didn't get along with a lot of the guys, but it don't make him a bad guy now. And it doesn't make me a bad guy. And you know, everybody's old and everybody has forgotten, forgiven, and all that. So,
what did you think about Eric Bischoff?
This is a great show. Eric, another guy that just all of a sudden he got the big job, right? But that isn't his fault. Eric just got the big job, but I think Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, I think they kind of effed up his head. And he got to where he was being super arrogant too. But the NWO got over, and so darn strong that it would be easy to be arrogant if you didn't watch yourself and keep yourself in check. But I tell you what, I can say all I want about if Eric got arrogant then and all that, but he put me on 150 a year and was a nice enough guy to do that for Darso. Me and Darso went down to the Ted Turner building, I think, in Atlanta, whatever that's called.
CNN Center, I think.
Yeah. And he signed us right up, and me and Barry came walking out and going, we just got 150 a year. It was for 2 years. And I think after about 18 months, we both got shut off, But that I know for me it was because my body was falling apart. There was nerve damage. I'm wearing sweatshirts in the locker room trying to hide my left tricep has fell off, and all these injuries are happening, and I'm like, why is this happening to me, God, But and Barry, I don't know why they cut Barry off or ended up, I think I don't know how Barry stopped getting paid, but he did about the same time I did. And Eric's just a harmless dude, he was a guy trying to be an announcer in the AWA and all that. And he was a nice guy, totally just a nice guy trying to make it.
Did Goldberg have an ego at all back then? And also, are you surprised that he's still going strong these days back on WWE pay-per-views?
Yeah, no, because I don't know how. I'm not surprised because I don't know how he does business. But one thing how Goldberg happened is when they gave him so many, when Eric Bischoff chose to push him that much and get, 90 wins or something in a row or whatever it was, it just totally effed up his head. He was like a guy that had to pay no dues at all. No wrestling camp, no sleeping in your back car. But he was a humble, nice guy. The night, I think I was there the first night he was there ever. And he was a nice guy. But to push him like that, the way they did, it totally effed up his head. And I remember seeing him talking about his son. He's like, I just tell my son, you got to give it 100% all the time. And I'm like, dude, it's a work. Is this guy for real? What have we created here? And I know, we us guys still talk about this. This ain't something I talk just came from my living room. We still talk like this to each other, guys. And like it totally effed up his head. You had to do a job for a guy. What were you going to do? Not take 150 grand a year and say no? I'm not going to do a job. But the main thing, one of the things, Hannibal, that hurt me, that really bothered me, I was telling Brad Rangens this just last night from my hotel room was, and I don't follow everything that much, but when Brock lost to Goldberg. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Brock is an absolute animal, national champ at the U of M, Ultimate Fighter, and you're doing a horse shit, a shitty job, like that. It just hurt because I guess what I'm saying is I'm a Brock fan, I love NCAA champions. I love amateur wrestlers because I guess I follow it more than the average pro wrestling fan or the average pro wrestler. But yeah, I got strong opinions on that stuff, but I just can't help it.
When did you actually become friends with Bruiser Brody?
Thanksgiving Day, 1985. I was in Japan, and I got 30 days in New Japan, my first tour over there. And he just kind of seen I was a guy that I was just trying to make it. And I think sometimes that first month in Japan, I mean, you can get freaking humiliated. And I did a lot, I'm like, look at all these little people. I'm just going to squash these son of a bitch. That's what I'm thinking. But I'm green as grass. So, they dive in on your legs and take you down. And, next thing you're getting humiliated, But Frank helped me. He seen that, he knew I was an ex-football player or that I got a little time in, at least in the USFL. And he got a couple years in, I think the Redskins or something. And so he just knew that, I was this guy that wanted to, Frank could appreciate guys that were, I think, had a little steam or whatever you want to call it, or a little bite to them, And even if you got your, taken down by a guy like Sakaguchi, who was like a gold medal judo champion, because you're seeing a guy like that take a lot of guys down quick. And Frank being one of them. So, yeah, so that's where I first met him and got in touch with him on the phone. And next thing I know, he got up to the AWA, and then we just got a few tag teams in together, and we both started, I picked up House from him, and yeah.
Did they ever try to bring you to Puerto Rico after he was killed to kind of replace him?
No. For whatever reason, they didn't. And again, that's another thing. I mean, you get guys like who, whatever you guys do, nobody go over to Puerto Rico now, And of course, guys kept going to Puerto Rico even after they murdered one of our guys. But again, it's easy to say that, but it's another hard thing to do if you got a big payday waiting for you. Guys like Rick, Flair, whoever else went over, Atlas. But I just could never believe guys were still go over there after they murdered Frank. That's messed up, man.
Is it true that there was some talk of you guys coming into WWE as a tag team at one point?
Yep, very true. In May, I got two things that my kids wouldn't kind of let me bring, but my ex-wife, I got divorced 15 years ago, and I was married for almost 25 years, and she boxes stuff up, and they found my fur boots, my original pair, and I think they were kind of like a little bit rotted, but not too bad. And I'm like, hey man, I can get like $500 for them. Yeah. No, Dad, we're gonna keep them. Well, just give it time. Not necessarily the second we find them, you want to take them and sell them. Because that's just kind of shit I do. They know I'm impulsive, but. And then the other thing was the contract for Vince. I actually found about a year ago, and it reads Frank Goodish, John Nord, $250,000 each a year, for 2 years, and I don't know if Barbara still has it or not, or if she ever had it. But me and Frank never talked about it. I asked him once. I said, $250, Frank, come on. He goes, brother. And Frank didn't want to do it. He's making $16,000 a week in Japan. He's making, all these outlaw shows. He's probably, I know I brought him in for a couple, but I only paid him $500 back then. But I'm sure other outlaw shows he got more like 1,000 and that. And he had a lot of them. He had his own time, and $250 didn't sound that great to him. But to me, I was like, holy shit, $250, man. That is, I'm rich. Please, and I talked to him twice about it before he got killed. And they weren't real long conversations, but I still got the contract, which I didn't even know I had, and I didn't care if I had it. But yeah, so, and I had one guy that wanted me to bring it out and sell it or something, but one day I will bring it out. And, yeah, I know, but it's easy to say that, but it just, I don't know. Yeah, maybe someday.
That would probably be worth more than the boots.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, well, they're my boots. Who gives a shit about me?
No, the boots you could probably, there's already some people commenting on here. How much you want for the boots?
Yeah, I know. Well, but you know what I'm saying, right, Hannibal? My kids are like, Dad, everything, you've sold cars that you should have kept, and you got nothing for them, and because they put it in your pocket, right? And they're more frustrated, not like kids that are like hating their dad. They're just laughing, going, no, we're not going to give you control of that. Because they know I might sell it to a guy on the way to where are we? The gathering. And for $100 or something, because I've done stupid shit like that.
You're getting $1,000 offer right now for the boots.
Wow.
Right
Yeah.
now.
Well, don't think I wouldn't take it if I had them here. But the next thing I want to do with both the things that I talked about, Hannibal, is I want to bring them so I can show people that it's real. It's not bullshit, especially the contract, because I can remember to this day the paper it was printed on, and it's a I just don't want to go over them and start digging in the boxes for shit.
How did you like feuding with the Undertaker in WWE? I understand you knew him from before WWE.
Yeah, I did. And I knew him in New Japan. It had to be 89 or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I did. And what had happened, Hannibal, is we're in Toledo, Ohio, and he had been doing this gimmick. I don't know for how long. I can't remember, but it was in 1991 or 2. Pat Patterson and had brought him off, said, who can you have a good match with? Because I don't think he was having good matches, because it's hard to do that gimmick, right? And move slow like that, unless you got a guy that is going to play off it, you know. And for whatever reason, I was having good matches with him because, you know, I think I just kept moving. He was the, you know, racket and I was the tennis ball. I would just bounce off and keep the match going. And it sounds like I'm just bragging, but I ain't. I'm just telling you what happened. And they say, who can you have a good match with? He said, John Nord. And to this day, I owe him because my money tripled, you know, for about, I don't know, I want to say for about 7-8 months. And I'm sure I wrestled him over 100 times in that amount. And that was always my favorite match. I knew I was going to make big money. It was an easy match. And I felt like, and I did go up to him and say, Mark, thank you, brother. Because he's the one who told me that they said, hey, who can you have a good match with? You know, so.
I remember one of the realest moments in wrestling as a kid was when he rolled out of the way and the sword stuck in the ring, because I was like, it has to be real. Like the sword actually went into the ring, because everybody thought it was a fake sword before that.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good point. And it was too bad too, though. I'll tell you, Hannibal, it's the one thing I felt bad about on that is I didn't trust him enough to move, and I stabbed the mat like really late. So they kind of had to adjust the film, you know. And I wish I would have just made it a lot closer stab. But yeah, they asked me, do you think you can get that thing to stick in the ring? I said, yeah, I'll make sure I can. And by just luck, it happened, because the actual sword wasn't super sharp or anything, but it was real metal. So yeah, and actually I appreciate that compliment, because that's what I thought maybe young kids were thinking. So
Yeah, I remember telling kids at school about it. Like, he actually tried to kill him.
it's awesome.
Now, I heard you talking about this with Nick earlier, but a lot of fans are asking it on here if you could tell the story about Nailz and Vince McMahon that you're documented as the one that I guess kind of saved Vince from the beating that Nailz gave him.
Yeah. Well, what was frustrating again now is all of a sudden they're going to start piss testing everybody. And certain guys could never, and you know this, certain guys could never get off pot, no matter how hard they try. They've been smoking it since they've been 9 years old, right? And Nailz was one of them guys. And I didn't really figure that out till after all this, that's why he had no choice. He knew he couldn't get off pot. But we're driving to Green Bay, to Brown County Arena, and we got a Lincoln rental car, and I'm driving, and Nailz is in the passenger seat, and Kevin says, I'm gonna beat the shit out of Vince, you know. And I says, really? Tonight? Yep. And I said, what do you want me to do? And he goes, we'll sit outside on the bench, and when you hear the shit hitting the fan, I'm going to scream, he put his hand on my dick. you know. And so that's what happened. I heard that. I go running in. Slaughter is there. And I'm actually like pretending I'm trying to pull Kevin off, you know, just a little bit. You know, I just got light. I just wasn't going to pull him off because I promised I wouldn't. He wanted me to act like I was pulling him off. And Sarge was there. And, you know, when you grab Kevin Kelly, it's like grabbing a piece of freaking iron, you know. Kevin's a badass dude. And I don't know. Then the sheriff comes in and his deputies, and I hear Vince going, I seen red, and I seen yellow in my neck, and he had me up in the air. And then Slaughter came in and saved me, and John came in and helped. And Vince goes, I want Kevin Kelly out of the arena right now. And this sheriff bowed up on Vince. He goes, Vince McMahon, you don't tell us to leave. That you can tell anybody to leave the arena. You know, and Vince had to just shut up and take it from these sheriff's department, you know. And there's nothing he could do. Not J.J. Dillon, not Pat Patterson, not nobody could save Vince because the sheriff's were not on Vince's side. They weren't on anybody's side. They were just telling him he couldn't play policeman and tell us what to do. And so Vince's lawyers called me a couple days later, and I basically just told them that what I just told you. And Kevin quit and hasn't been back, and it just died out. That got swept under the rug pretty quick. I mean, don't you agree?
Yeah, well, people are still talking about it, but yeah.
You know, but for how dramatic it was, it got swept under the rug pretty quick. At least
yeah. If that had happened with the internet today, it would have been massive.
Oh yeah. Oh, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Oh, big time.
Now we're getting close to the end of the time here, but I know you worked with the Ultimate Warrior. Oh, here he comes.
You know what? We're not close to the end of the time.
Yeah.
We are at the end of the time. Okay. Let me tell you something, Hannibal.
Captain, we're going to need a part 2 with this guy.
Yeah, you're lucky that you got a part 1, okay? Let's cut to the facts. The busiest man in the virtual game right now.
What have you been cooking your friend, by the way?
What
have you been cooking your friend? You got to get that guy on a diet.
What'd you say?
Your friend.
Who's my friend?
Whoever the other guy is in the room.
That's very disrespectful. Don't worry about him. What you need to worry about?
Henry's got enough problems.
Listen.
On him.
Is this who you're talking about? Don't worry about
right.
Henry.
Hey,
He's a good man.
I'm on a diet already, Hannibal.
Listen, don't worry about Henry.
He's lost 20 pounds in 8 months.
Your life will kiss Hannibal. You need to be kind.
Oh,
with
that
your words,
hurts, man.
Okay? It stings. Words sting. And you know what else stings? This stings. Good night, Hannibal.